Just for a moment, I've decided to dip my toe back into Batman. I haven't talked about Batman on my channel for years, which is a surprise given how well my Batman videos typically do. You'd think Batman was some kind of niche topic nobody had ever heard of. But I get it. A lot of people just struggle to identify with a Batman in an old-timey world fighting bad guy gangsters wearing fedoras. That's why, instead, I'm going to talk about a Batman in an old-timey world fighting bad guy gangsters wearing fedoras. But also, Prince is involved somehow. Yup, I'm exploring the Tim Burton Batman films. And also the Joel Schumacher Batman films. Quite a broad topic to be covering in such a short video, am I right? These are among the many Batman iterations I grew up with, and I've always loved how they're technically all considered part of the same continuity. Despite their different tones, different styles, different production designs, and even different Batmans. Badmintons? It's just something that wouldn't fly today at all. In a modern superhero movie, these would either be reboots, or they'd spend billions of dollars crafting some complicated multiverse crossover narrative that nobody likes. Here, you just squint real hard and accept it. You don't take the continuity too seriously. It's like a James Bond movie. I like that. I don't think these were conversations we were really having back in the day. But that's not to say we weren't comparing and debating the merits of these movies. And here's where we get to the point. I remember one day when I was around 12, my friend and I were comparing the newer two Schumacher films to the older Burton films. And he said to me, "The new Batman movies are better than the old Batman movies because the new ones put you right into the action." I don't really remember what I said in response or even whether I agreed or disagreed, but for some reason, I never forgot that. I remember how it made me feel. Something about it seemed off to me. It didn't feel like it should be a compelling argument. Maybe I was having a knee-jerk reaction to someone saying new, good, old, bad. I've always bristled at that assertion, always tended to prefer the old thing. Which I can tell you made me a really popular kid to be around. But I was also right on that cusp of growing up. My tastes were developing. The assertion that something was better because it had more immediate action just wasn't flying with me. It's why I'm such a popular adult to be around in Dragon Ball fandom. But the thing is, part of me wanted to believe him. I was 3 and 6 when the Tim Burton movies came out, and while I loved the aesthetic, I had a hard time watching the movies themselves. They scared me. The Schumacher films definitely did not.
Never leave the cave without it.
They did exactly what they were supposed to do. Appeal to kids. They appealed to me, they were appealing to my friend, and to me at least, as a kid, the idea that the Schumacher films were better because they got you right into the action was a much more palatable defense than to say, the Schumacher films are better because the old ones scare me and also make me feel things. I legit ran out of the room when I saw this scene as a child. Within another couple of years, as a teenager, I would reevaluate the old Burton films and decisively fall into the camp of liking them more. But again, that one thing my friend said always stayed with me, as did the fact that I just didn't have the wherewithal or vocabulary to craft a rebuttal. If only I could have said then the kinds of things I'm thinking now. So, yeah, my videos are just shower thoughts to arguments from 25 years ago. That seems healthy. But it got me thinking, if we were having this conversation as media-savvy adults, what would we be saying? Because, while presented in kid language, the core idea of what my friend was saying had some truth to it. The Burton and Schumacher Batman films are doing very different things with their openings. What are they doing? You know what they say, you only get to make one first impression. The opening sequences of a movie can and should tell you a lot about what you're going to be seeing. The Joel Schumacher films Batman Forever and Batman and Robin do indeed jump into the action faster. Batman, and later Batman and Robin, suit up, gear up, drive off, and confront a classic comic book villain in an over-the-top, reality-defying action sequence. And it's really only after the conclusion to that scenario that the story begins in earnest. It's kind of like the opening to an Indiana Jones movie. What is this trying to tell us? These are our heroes. This is what they do. These are the kinds of enemies they face. These are the kinds of traps and dangers they must overcome. As Joel Schumacher would often remind his cast while they were filming, this is a comic book, and so we're going to open with sequences that are evocative of the kinds of comic books he would have been reading as a kid. Yes, it's campy and silly and over the top. Much ridicule, far too much I would argue, has been lobbed at the bat nipples and bat asses. But hey, you remember these series of shots. You remember, I'll get drive-through. You remember, boiling acid. You remember, what killed the dinosaurs, the Ice Age. It's concentrated fun. The backlash around Batman and Robin infamously introduced lots of people to the term toyetic, describing how suitable a movie is for merchandising tie-in products. I'll admit it's a rather cringy perspective, but again, the openings of the movies communicate that philosophy very well. After so much parental hullabaloo was made over how dark and depressing Batman Returns was, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin opened by proudly proclaiming, "Hey everybody, let's play with our toys. Let's get into costume, grab our gadgets, hop in our cool new Batmobile, and our other cool new Batmobile because all the kids already bought the previous Batmobile toy, and go fight some crime." Even Elliot Goldenthal's new score was meant to be evocative of the kinds of music children might hum while playing with their toys. Da, 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 da. None of this is meant to be a qualitative judgment. I'm simply stating what the movies are trying to communicate. They want to be fun. They want to be colorful. They want to be inviting to children. And yes, they want to encourage children to buy all our play sets and toys. They want to make those impressions early to communicate that this is what their films are about. And to that, all I can say is, mission accomplished. Now let's jump back a few years to 1989's Batman and its opening sequence, which is very different. A tourist family visiting Gotham City end up getting lost and then mugged. Out of the shadows steps this mysterious and horrifying Batman to scare the ever-loving crap out of the bad guys. It is technically an action sequence, kinda. Batman kicks that guy through a door, there's a little bit of gunplay, Batman holds another guy over the ledge of a building. It's tense and moody, but hardly for better or worse, depending on your perspective. But you can see how marked a difference it is from the Schumacher openings. For one, just look at the framing. In the Schumacher openings, we're Batman. His perspective is our perspective. We start in the Batcave, his inner sanctum. We suit up with him. We ride out to glorious battle with him. It makes it very easy for us to pick up our action figures in our grubby little hands and have our own Batman adventures. Here, the perspective is completely removed from Batman. We're not Batman. We're the victimized family. We're the muggers. Batman is the other. He's mysterious and confusing and dangerous.
What are you? I'm Batman.
It's introducing us to Batman from the outside in. And given that this is a movie that follows the perspective of Vicky Vale and slowly, very slowly, peels away the layers as to who this Batman fellow is, I'd say this opening establishes that theme quite well. Or if you're more critical, it establishes this is a film that hardly features Batman at all. But it's also about more than Batman as a character. It's about Gotham City as a character. It's dark and dangerous and gritty and unpleasant. You're not safe.
Decent people shouldn't live here. They'd be happier someplace else.
It shows what happens to happy families in Gotham City, which I'd argue is a subtler way of establishing Batman's backstory. I don't think it's a coincidence that the movie opens on a mother, a father, and a young boy. I'm almost certain that when I first saw this movie as a child, I thought this was Bruce Wayne and his parents, and that the movie was opening on Batman's backstory. But while that is not literally true, that is essentially what we're seeing, just with a better outcome. This is why Gotham City needs Batman. It's why this is the first crime we see Batman stop, tying him to this specific act an hour and a half before we learn that this is who he is. It's establishing Batman by drawing parallels to other characters, planting seeds that will only sprout later in the film. Batman Returns' opening functions in much the same way, but in reverse. It's the only one that has an opening that's not really interested in establishing Batman. And again, you can feel free to make your quips that it's because Tim Burton is interested in every character but Batman. The opening of Batman Returns establishes who the Penguin is, conveys his origin. He's a violent, deformed baby. We don't see him. Like in the previous film, we're getting to know him through perspectives outside of his. We just see his effects on others until finally his parents throw him into the sewers. It's far more direct a backstory than we get with Batman in the opening of the first film. We're not waiting until 2/3 of the way in to directly confirm who this guy is. It's right there in our faces. No glitzy action, just character. However, I'd argue this one relies on Batman Returns being a direct sequel and counting on its audience to already know who Batman is. A big theme of the film is the similarities and differences between its hero and villains, that they're all tragically the same except for how they choose to handle their trauma.
We're the same. Split. Right down the center.
I'm just jealous because I'm a genuine freak and you have to wear a mask.
If his parents hadn't 86'd him, you two might have been bunkies at prep school.
I think that last line in particular is telling. The Penguin in this sequence is being established as the anti-Batman. They're both born rich and privileged to rich and privileged parents. They're both abandoned by their parents. But while Batman's parents died while he was spared, the Penguin's parents sacrifice him to hold on to their privilege. Batman Returns' opening is more straightforward in its aims than Batman, but I think it solidifies that core difference between the beginnings of the Burton films and the Schumacher films. The Schumacher films establish the tone and action, the Burton films establish character. Finally, we can see some of this mindset within the title sequences as well. The Burton films have title sequences that are equally brooding and mysterious. This bassinet travels through the dark and uninviting sewers, delivering the baby to his destiny. And in Batman, it looks pretty similar, banking around weird turns and curves, dark and confusing. What is this? Well, it's the Batman logo. We pull back on something that seems inscrutable and unfathomable in order to understand what it really is. If that doesn't sum up what the movie is about, I don't know what does. Both of Schumacher's openings are exactly the same. They're like big Hollywood marquees. There's no mystery or tension. They're not trying to confuse you or leave you hanging. Schumacher wants to excite you. He wants to introduce you to these wonderful, beautiful actors. These titles are adventurous. They're eye-catching. They're big and boisterous and inviting. Again, just like the movies themselves. I've tried very hard not to make value judgments against any of the movies while discussing this. Yes, I do prefer the Burton movies for their brooding weirdness, but I also enjoy the Schumacher films for their camp weirdness. They scratch different itches. Despite me opening this with my friend's assertion that the newer two movies are better, I didn't really want to debate that. What really interested me was examining how their first few minutes are different enough to have elicited such a response in the first place. as well as how efficiently both sets of movies are able to establish what they are just from their openings. And yeah, I might not agree with the childhood version of my friend, but I can definitely see how he was able to draw such a distinction. It's not something we could verbalize at our young ages, but whether we understood it or not, we were being influenced by the language of cinema. Through tone, framing, color, dialogue, theme, and action, even movies about the same vigilante in a ridiculous bat costume can say very different things. And I love that. And I love being able to understand why. Thanks so much for watching. After my huge manifesto on Donkey Kong 64, not to mention several half-hour-long full costume and makeup productions on Sailor Moon, I needed something easier and shorter to unwind with. Hope you enjoyed it. I've had this on my list of videos I wanted to tackle for a while. If you're new here, I've done several older videos covering the 1940s Batman serials, the first time Batman was ever on film. Next time we'll be returning to Dragon Ball GT over in Dragon Ball Dissection. Please help me out by doing the subscribing thing, the notifications thing, the liking and commenting thing, and if you can, the Patreon thing, so you can enjoy the name in the credits thing, and the early access to videos thing. And now's the thing where I say, see you next time. Thing.